TikTok, it's time to rock. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sunday show. It's our pleasure, ladies and gentlemen. If you're regulars to our channel, you'll be familiar with Brody. He's been on our show at least 3 or 4 times, Brody.
No, the other way. No, the other way. Landscape.
Can we hear
The other
Brody?
way. Brody, can you hear us? I don't know if that was a yes or a no.
Oh, it's fantastic seeing you guys. Brad, where have you been?
Oh, we've been here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. All right. So, Rock Professor's here.
That's it, Brody.
That's better, Brody. That's fine. Yeah.
Brody.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, brother. Can't hear you, brother.
You moved. Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
You're muted, Brody. Brody is muted. That's correct.
Muted? Is he muted?
He's
or
muted.
Can you unmute him, or does he have to unmute him?
No, I can't unmute him, brother. I cannot unmute him.
Should we put?
Well,
Press the unmute. Oh, look, there you are, Brody. We can hear you now.
Brody.
Say something. He's got his headphones. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Fantastic.
Yes, we can. I think you just had yourself muted.
No, I just plugged in the headphones.
Awesome. Good to see you, brother. Thank you for hanging out with us. Glad that you got audio and visual. Fantastic.
Yeah, audio. Yeah. Sorry if you got to look at me, but
no, it's okay. We have done a show with a couple of guys that are camera shy, but they did audio, so that's okay. Either they're camera shy or they just didn't want to upset me and Brad and the Rock Professor because they were better looking,
So much better looking, yes.
yeah. Well, that's an award I'll never win.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. You're not bad.
Steady now.
Pretty
Steady
good.
now.
Yeah.
So do we say good evening, good afternoon, good day?
Oh, hi.
All of them. All of them. All of the above. Oh dear.
It's good evening where I am. It's good evening where Brad is, and the Rock Professor is good morning.
Good morning.
And you're caught between you're between morning and evening, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm either someone's late Saturday night or someone's early Sunday morning. I don't know. So
rockstar hours, they call it.
Rockstar hours.
Yeah, it's usually I get up in about an hour and a half or so and try to go out for a run or something.
Yeah,
oh my God! Well done.
Well, I'm getting old. I don't want to get old and fat, so I'm trying to fight that as best I can.
You look awesome, Brody. That's from Holly. So yeah.
Thank you, but I think your eyes are bad.
Good to see you, bro. Look, we might as well crack the show and get it cracking. The Rock Professor can do a shout out at the end of the show. I think, Brody, you're the guest host. You picked this album for us to rank. Like I was saying in the intro, you're going to go first. You're going to talk about the album. I'm going to offer my rankings, followed by the Backdoor Man, and then the Rock Professor, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
So drum roll, right? Do I do that?
Brad's muted, mate. Brad's muted. There you are.
I said we might have we've got a couple of things we've got to go through quickly.
Yeah.
Really
quickly.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. I was going to say,
So,
Brad's got an unboxing.
Oh,
I've got
yeah.
an unboxing.
Sorry, bro. How could I forget that?
I got a package.
I'm all over the place.
I'm going to hide the address on it, and I'm going to use a guitar pick to slice the. Look at that.
No, we
Hot
should.
knife.
We should
Hot
put your
knife
address
and
on there because someone might send you guitars.
Well, we don't want to do that, do we? Hang on. What's going on here?
Do you hear that? Brad's turning down somebody to send him a guitar.
May the tone be with you.
Yes. Boom. I can't see me. That's
Oh!
all right. Guns.
Nice.
Clickbait.
Clickbait. Yes.
Oh! What am I doing? Let's not... Grab your cup, Rock Professor. Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, look at that.
Thank you, Holly.
Look at that. Thank you, Holly. Fantastic. Look at that. Woo. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Very much. That's very kind. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Fabulous.
Might
Look at
sneak
that.
off and make a quick cuppa. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. I've got
So
my
thank you very much
copy
for
in
that.
it.
It's wonderful. Now the team, we're all got one each. That's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brad's right. We had a bit of a script, ladies and gentlemen, for the intro. A couple of things that we want to talk that we like talking about before we kick the show off properly. Eric Clapton celebrated his 78th birthday last week. The great man, big
Good
part of
work,
our lives, big part of what we do here on the channel. So happy birthday, Eric. Thank you for the music and thank you for everything that you've done. Always great to see or hear anything that Eric's doing. I see that he's got that big gig coming up, which isn't going to be broadcast.
No. I believe it's going to be filmed for historical purposes, apparently. We don't know what that means, but it could end up coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When it's historical. Later, Brad's going to guess. He's going to guess. Gets flagged.
Yeah, be careful, bro.
Yeah.
And the Rock Professor, you've got something that you want to say?
About Friday. Yes. Well, on Friday, I went to a That Pedal Show experience day. It was fantastic. Amazing experience. It was spend a day with Mick and Dan from That Pedal Show, doing all sorts of crazy things. And I think that Andrew and I are going to do a show next Sunday, and I'll talk a bit more about it. And I've got some photos and all sorts of things that we can show.
You're going to join us, Brad?
Yeah, I'll do my best. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'll be able to join 100%.
I forget if it's Mick or Dan, but who has that Telecaster that sounds like $1 million?
Oh, Dan. It's Dan's Telecaster. Yeah.
That thing is magic.
The butterscotch one or the red one, because he's got two, and he's got the butterscotch one, which is a 62 custom shop, and he's got red, which is his long time.
I think it's the red one that I'm.
The red one, yeah, he's had for years, and it's just molded it to him. Yeah.
It sounds great.
Well, as you can imagine, they have lots of fantastic gear. I played Mick's 61 Strat as well. It's cool. But and I posted a picture of me, not of me actually, of Mick, but I did play his that Murphy Lab Les Paul through that Marshall with everything on 10.
Lovely.
Getting your Jimmy Page on through that. Come on. No
Bravo.
pedals, just straight in. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that next week. But it was a great day on Friday. I really enjoyed myself.
Perfect.
Yes.
So,
I reckon we dive straight into the track, the album. Brody.
All right.
Yes, sir.
tell us.
Okay. Well, so I assume you guys at least got a bit familiar with 38 Special if you weren't already. Okay.
Yes.
But let me. I mean,
Definitely.
so before this, how familiar were you all with 38 Special?
Myself, very limited. Very limited. I know of 38 Special. I might have heard the album once or twice in the last 25, 30 years.
Okay. How about
I
you,
don't
Cash?
think. I don't think I know the name, and that's been it, Brody. I mean, I think that when they came out, and I was thinking about this earlier actually. When they came out in the UK, and so this album's from 1980. I think by then the US and the UK's music had kind of branched away a lot. So bands that were big in America were not necessarily very big here. And I would include Van Halen in that. I mean, one of the interesting things, Van Halen came here once, toured with Black Sabbath, in '78, and then they only came back and did Monsters of Rock at Donington. So here, if you ask people here about Van Halen, they'll know Jump, and that'll be about it.
Wow.
It's really weird, and from a UK perspective, and I just had a look to see what was so the number one album. So there are things like Rod Stewart, The Pretenders, Genesis, Paul McCartney, Peter Gabriel, Roxy Music, the Rolling Stones, Gary Newman, Kate Bush, David Bowie. So you do pretty much. This is the UK albums from 1980. It's kind of top albums from 1980. So there's not a huge amount of American. There's Barbra Streisand's in there, and Johnny Mathis, and they're kind of quite middle of the road artists. But pretty much most of them are pretty much all of them are UK artists. They're clearly big in America as well, but. If you compare that to the US charts for then, you'll find there's quite a lot of difference. So bands like 38 Special that were clearly pretty big in America, I don't know if they ever came to the UK. You might better tell us, but they never made any real imprint over here at all. Because if they did come, it would have been maybe to a festival or something. But they might have been. But they never came here and toured. And we'd gone in 77, 78. We've done that branching away, and a whole lot of different things were going on. That kind of post new wave punk thing in the UK was very much kind of electronica and all sorts of things. So we started to kind of branch away then, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So
Andrew,
anything else?
Andrew,
I've heard of the band. I used to work with a woman who was a 38 Special fan. She spent a lot of time in the States, and I think the Tour de Force was the album that we were listening to. But like Simon, they weren't big on the radio here. They're not big on classic rock radio stations here at all, Brody, at all. So yeah, it's an interesting situation with 38 Special. Yeah, that's my experience. I heard a couple of songs on this album over the years. There's some gems.
Yeah, and it's not dissimilar over here. I think if you played "Hold On Loosely," most people would recognize the song, but they don't. If you ask them who sings this song, I don't think they would know. They wouldn't know who it was. Which actually, at one time, I think on the one show with you guys and Hoss, I had said about I wanted to start a band called the Flux Capacitors. Go back and do stuff from a certain era. But I'd also had another thematic idea called the Unsung Heroes, to play songs that call the band the Unsung Heroes, and you play all the songs that people know them, but they wouldn't know who did it. They'd have no idea what the band was. And this is the category that I think 38 Special, falls into, because it, when every guitar player, for example, when they start to play, there's that place that it starts, whether it's, Clapton or Eddie Van Halen or Jimmy Page or whomever, whomever it is. There are all these other little places that they go that they want to, that also influences it. And at the time, this record, it was literally a record, and our neighbors had a turntable, and they had this LP, and I put it on, literally dropped the needle, and the first track on this thing is Hold On Loosely, which is, I think, one of the more memorable guitar riffs out there. It's like you hear that and it's like, whoa. And so this record was actually the fourth record of 38 Special. They had two excuse me, before that, and then the third one was called Rockin' Into the Night. And the interesting thing, and we'll get into this on some of the charts, they started as another Skynyrd-like band, from when the whole Southern rock thing was going on, and they were all from Jacksonville. So, the Allman Brothers, Skynyrd, they all grew up near each other, especially Skynyrd in 38. They grew up with each other. They recorded with each other. Some had been in different bands. The original bass player was in Skynyrd for a while, and formed, so it's the younger brother of Ronnie Van Zant. Donnie Van Zant is the singer in the band in this first formation of it, and you could tell really, really early on it was like, here's another Leonard Skynyrd, in a nice way, not a thing, but they were, on this path to be another Marshall Tucker, to be another, Outlaws or Allman Brothers, Skynyrd, whatever. Very Southern rock, very, maybe a little more rock than country. And the first two records, didn't do well, and when you listen to them, it's like, okay, I get it. Here's another Skynyrd, even with a Van Zant and somebody who sounds really similar singing wise. So then Rockin' Into the Night comes out, and in fact, that record, they changed their producer. It was a guy named Dan Hartman.
Of course, yeah, Instant Replay.
And I forget, what was the other big hit that he had after that then? It'll come to me at some random time. But, he did those first two records. And then on the third record, they, the guys decided to, and the Atlanta Rhythm Section, that was the other, kind of big band that impacted, the way that 38 Special ended up launching. And it was with a guy named Rodney Mills, who had engineered some of the Skynyrd records, the Marshall Tucker band, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, with a guy named Barry Bailey. And Jeff Carlisi, who was in college at the time in Atlanta, came over and would watch this guy named Rodney Mills and Barry Bailey do these parts for the Atlanta Rhythm Section records. And, so now fast forward, and 38's got they're working on their third record, which ended up being Rockin' Into the Night. They knew they had to do something, because this was back in the day where you got a couple of records, it was multiple record deals, but today you wouldn't even get past that first one. But on the third record, 38 goes in, and then this is, with A&M Records still, they go in and say, basically, we're going to come back to Atlanta. We're going to record. We want to hire Rodney Mills to be the producer, who had never produced a record before. He was an engineer. So here's the band on the third, heading into their third record with two, less than stellar, successes on the first two. And long story short, A&M agrees to it. They get in with Rodney. Rodney's like, but I've never produced a record before. He ends up being the producer on this thing. So it was just a long shot all the way around. So they had the Rockin' Into the Night record all finished in 1980 for release. And this song gets brought to them. It's all the songs with the exception of what ended up being the title track of "Rockin' Into the Night," which is a song written by their early successes were with the guys from Survivor with Jim Peterick. It was like enter a co-writer, and now this whole thing. Now the hits come, and a couple other things. So you had, Carlisi, familiar with how to produce guitar parts, having seen Rodney Mills and Barry Bailey do a lot of the Atlanta rhythm section stuff. And, as we'll get into this, these very much were parts. I mean, they were put together, they were played, they were tracked, they were layered. They were that was really the success. But the first thing, was Jim Peterick coming in, and now you got a hit song. And you got songs that are written in a register that weren't that of Donnie Van Zant, but was Don Barnes, the singer. So he was up there in those songs in like E and G that were a little higher, and he brought the whole pop element to this thing. So all of a sudden, you've got these poppy, catchy songs that, end up on radio. So Wild Eyed Southern Boys, I picked that one because it's got three, I'll say 3.5, songs on there that proves that the equation of the co-writer, Don Barnes singing, now you've got a hit making situation, so this record comes out, and it was sort of like Free. They were listening to a lot of the English bands at the time too, like Free, especially. They liked that kind of stuff, as did Skynyrd. But so this record comes out, and everybody thinks it's the first 38 Special record. But the "Rockin' Into the Night" song, somebody, it was brought into them like, hey guys, you need a hit, and I think this is the hit, on this record. So they take it, and this was, I think, Carlisi and Barnes, in a conversation with Rodney Mills and somebody perhaps at the label that says you should give the song a shot. They take the song, Jeff and Don take the song to the rest of the band. Didn't go over very well. It's like, okay. And I've been in bands before too. If somebody introduces something that's not, what you're on, most times it is met with resistance, and for whatever reason, guys just get stuck in their ways, and they want to do what they want to do. So somehow they get this thing, like, okay, we'll do it. They record it, and then they realize that it might be tough for Donnie Van Zant to sing. So Don Barnes takes a crack at it, and bang. And now you've got a charting song. And I forget exactly what level it hit, on the charts. It was 40 something, on the top, whatever. So it charts, it puts them on the map. So
was this Hold On Loosely?
No, this is Rockin' Into the Night. So this is my prequel here. And so that's 1980. It comes out. Now it's like, okay, we've got this Rockin' Into the Night formula. We've got another record coming up. How do we take the success of that and make a record that's gonna work? And so they worked with again Jim Peterick, who at the time he was actually in the Ides of March. if you recall, that band, and like Vehicle, and that was him. And so Rockin' Into the Night comes out, gets released, goes public. They had never met each other yet. It wasn't until the Wild Eyed Southern Boys record that they met Jim Peterick, got together, and there are a lot of cool stories out there about how that went, and the story of them then knowing, hey, you were in the why is the picture of Ides of March up here? They didn't realize that was him. That was Jim Peterick. And anyhow, long story short, the first thing they did when they got together was wrote Hold On Loosely. So, they describe Peterick as this just ball of fire, this energy guy, this, great songwriter, obviously. And he's like, you know, they go to his place, and this is when they'd already said, we're going to come down and we're going to, you know, be in Atlanta and record. They get together and he goes, what do you got? You know, and there's a story too. I don't want to take up too much time with this, but the idea, this riff, these eighth notes that come out, was actually influenced by the Cars. You know, Jeff Carlisi, the Just What I Needed, you know, that song came out and he hears it and it's very, you know, at first he didn't like it and then heard it a number of times, was like, okay, wow, I like that. So he's sitting around and comes up with that, you know, the eighth notes. So he shows Peter, he goes, okay, I got this, you know, what do you think of this? And he's playing that riff, you know, in the rhythm, which ended up being the intro, the verses, and the chorus on it, which was a pretty unique song structure. And then Don Barnes had the idea for the lyric, like, you know, hold on loosely, you know, and then somebody finished that with, but don't let go. And I think it was Peter that said, but don't let go. So, you know, they're off to the races, let's say, on that one. So this record, so now we're starting with the record, and we're 30 minutes into this thing, and the unabridged version, ladies and gentlemen. So, you know, so this record comes out, and it ultimately ends up with several songs that are co-written with Peter and now have Don Barnes singing, but you hear all the stuff that was there before, which was a great pocket, you know, with the two drummer thing, just had a bigness to it. And Carlisi and Barnes, I mean, they're just criminally underrated guitar players. When you listen to these pieces and these parts, it's so melodic. It's so, like, you can sing the parts to it. And so this record comes out, and at that point they know we have to take a different path, you know, if we're gonna be successful on this thing. So there's, you know, 9 songs that came out in 1981 that, you know, I got to pull the list up here so I can take a look at. But and you'll note some of the songs, I'm just going to, unless you guys want to stay on them, there are really about 3 of them that I want to spend most of the time on, because I think they're the ones that make that was, you know, the really the beginning of 38 Special, as people that know of them know them, you know, up even through the Tour de Force days and before they finally get a number 1 hit with a song called Second Chance. So this record's at our neighbor's place, and I put it on. I'm like, okay, I want to, you know, just had Alabama and Conway Twitty and 38 Special, and I mean the most eclectic stack of records that were there. And I put this on, and I hear this Hold On Loosely, and I'm like, what is this? You know, so that being the first track on, you know, on here, everything, I think the only thing this song doesn't have for me, I don't know that there are any backing vocals on it. You know, it's more like just Don Barnes. So I'm normally a harmony guy, and I love listening to that kind of stuff. It's not there, and I never missed it. You know, so you get into that riff, you get into the dynamics of how they build, you know, the song, the verse, the intro, the whatever. And you'll notice in that first verse, there's no bass on it. You know, it only hits on that turnaround. And then whenever they go into the My Mind Goes Back to a Girl I Met some years ago, that's when it's like they go from, you know, first gear, second gear, and then into the chorus. And they're really deliberate about how they build that up, both with the, you know, the bass not being there, the bass coming, and then how they open up the drums whenever they're, you know, they've got it, you know, real tight, and then they go and they're opening it up over on the ride. And of course, all these just guitar parts that are crazy, you know, layered all over each other, and really simple, very very country-esque, you know, when you really listen to them on the, you know, some of the bends. But just the and the tone of their guitars. There's like a honk or on the rhythms that just to this day, it's like I keep going after that sound. And took years and years till I realized it was Carlisi, in large part with a Les Paul Deluxe and mini humbuckers on it because of Barry Bailey in the Atlanta Rhythm section, who also had one. It was a Gold Top 69. And it took forever to realize that was what was making a lot of those sounds, So I just the solos, especially Don Barnes's vocals. I think he's one of the greatest singers, one of the best rock singers, like right up there with a Paul Rodgers for me. I mean, his range, his timbre. There's just a tone to his voice that's like wow, And that was the beginning of it for me with Hold On Loosely, and that there's some signature like riffs in there that they do, the real subtle, the bends and every time you listen to it, something else pops out, at least, with me. So.
Wow.
Cool.
Wow. Wow.
Well done.
Wow.
That's fantastic intro. Way.
Oh, look! What a fantastic intro, and really appreciate the fact that you've given us some archaeology into the history of where this band came from, Brody. Fantastic. So I'm going next. Did you rank that song? Have you given it a ranking, Brody, out of 10?
One being the lowest and 10 being the highest.
Yeah.
That's a 10 for me. That's a 10. Everything about that song is a 10 to me.
Fantastic. Look, I have to back you up with. I like the melodious approach to the song that you spoke about, that you articulated quite well, with not having the bass and introducing the bass and building that melody. It's fantastic. It's a smart move. The song's certainly a cruiser, isn't it? It's a cruiser song. It's a song that I can imagine myself cruising down the freeway, as you call it in your country, or here it's called the highway. Great song. I love that fact that it's given me that impression when I hear the song. Look, it's got a great catchy ringing riff, hasn't it? And it's got that mid-tempo punch that I love. I'm glad that you spoke about the tone and the punch of the guitar. I'm sure myself and some of my other co-hosts are going to be talking about that as we progress with the tracks. But certainly a great opener. I've ranked it 9 out of 10, Brody, and I'm going to pinch something that I read somewhere recently that I think describes the song adequately, at least in my mind. It's got rock power, but it's got that pop radio polish, which is not a bad thing, because, again, you got to remember in 1980, pop music was a lot different compared to what it is today. So it wasn't necessarily, a frowned upon term. But, I like it. Rock power, but it's got that radio-friendly polish. Love it. I've given it 9 out of 10, Brody. Never a skip. Brad.
Hold On Loosely. Starts off with that real cool chugging guitar riff intro. And it opens up, like you alluded to, with the bass coming in, not immediately into the second verse and things like that. Opens up into that pre-chorus, and with a very catchy chorus line. It is, it's got that sort of gruffness about it, and it's very polished as well. So you can tell it's a well-constructed song, and the guitar parts are well-constructed. There's some beautiful guitar tracking. The drums are really snappy. It's keeping it really tight, really polished, and the bass playing is really locked in. There's very catchy melodic guitar solos, cool use of octaves and bends, and a great outro guitar solo as well. I've given it, without sort of doubling up on what Brody's already said and Andrew's already said, I give it 10 out of 10 and a great opening track to the album. So
wow.
Yeah, Simon, rock professor.
There's a lot there. Yeah, I think you're right. I think what's interesting to me is that it's part of that 80s where they've gone for the production, they've gone for working it out, haven't they? You can, as Brody, as you said earlier, the guitar parts are worked out, and they're tracked and they're organized. They've decided what to do and stuff. So they put a structure on the song of what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. As you say, bring in the bass later and those kind of things, which is really cool. The beginning sounds to me like the Cars, dun, 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 dun,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of that same kind of chug that wasn't just what I needed has. Only because we play it in our band, that's why it reminds me of that. But I think that it's very much moving in, away from the 70s, into that smoother production, a lot more worked out, a lot more organized. Brody, what you've spoken about, that background that you gave clearly demonstrates that. I gave it a 9 out of 10 and never a skip.
Oh gosh, I thought maybe I was going to be in timeout because you were going to give it a 10. So fantastic. Fantastic rankings. And I see in the chat Holly's given it a 10, Hugh's given it a 10, so Alan's given it a 10. Well, so we're all, as they say, Brody, we're all on the money.
Yeah, there you go. And so how is it? This just sounds like a marketing exercise that has yet to be done. How can it rank that high, even with some of you guys that may not have been as familiar with it before the show? It's 42 years old now. Yeah, 42 years old. It's still ranking 9s and 10s, and a lot of people may not, hadn't heard of the band, but I think a lot are familiar with the song. So it's held up. Everything about it, the song, the production, the musicianship in it. So it's I was really surprised because I was a bit nervous because I'm like, oh, this band 38 Special 30s. And it's like it's just, for me, it's like I want to tell everybody about it, especially guitar players. Like, have you heard this? Have you heard that? So I was a bit nervous putting this one out there because it was a bit, it's obscure in a way.
Fantastic.
So rest assured, Brody, what we do is we rank like each track independently, like each album independently of anything else. We give it the credit and what it deserves. We rank the songs accordingly. We're not comparing them to other artists or anything like that. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're just ranking the album and the flow of the album and the songs individually on each album. So that's the thing we do on this channel is we try to give obscure albums as well as well-known albums a run and give them the credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Next track.
Yes.
Okay. Second track is called First Time Around. So, here's a song that it does introduce a co-writer on it, Larry Steele, who ends up, writing some other songs with the band. But in a respectful, very reverent way, there's songs on here that I'll refer to as, the end of the Skinnerd era for 38 Special, or them being there's still some very Southern rock songs on here before they get into the pop stuff, which, I agree with you. I don't know when pop became a negative thing, but, popular in and of itself is just that, and so a song's got a hook. It appeals to, a lot of people, is therefore popular. What's the downside of that? So this song was Carlisi Barnes, Donnie Van Zant, and Larry Steele wrote this song First Time Around. And it's definitely an aggressive, more aggressive kind of song that's got some poppy things in it, but it's really more of a Southern rock song, I think, than it is more of what became that signature sound for 38 Special, and a couple of really killer guitar solos in it. But I think, excuse me, to me, my favorite part about this song after the killer guitar playing is the background singers. Where they have the, which is still, a nod to Skinnerd with the, like 2 or 3 like female singers that are bringing those parts to it. It's probably my favorite my second favorite part of the song. But it's to me, it wasn't what I associate with, with 38 Special. Now, I think this was still some of the stuff they were growing away from, on some of the pre-pop stuff. So a number on it, I give it a 7. I mean, it's a good song. The guitars are fantastic, and those singers are great. But they're really 3 songs on this record that are no skips for me. And the other ones, if I've got a 15-minute ride and I want to listen to this record, this is not one of the songs that I would have on there.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I can show you my notes too, Brady. So Donnie's vocals on the song are superb, and I love that dynamic guitar solo that's going on here, with the hint of a little bit of what you said, that gritty crunch, especially on the end solo of the song. So like that. A developing idea of a song, maybe. Would have liked to have seen maybe where the song could have gone. I don't know. I've given it an 8 out of 10, Brody. It's an interesting song to follow up a kick-ass opener. So yeah, not their strongest. Brad.
Okay, so we're up to first time around. I've got here, without doubling up on everyone else, I've got the guitar tones. They've got that grit to them, but very clear in the mix, very predominant in the mix. I like that. The trills, that little trill thing going on at the start there, I like that guitar. Very catchy chorus. Again, some very clever guitar tracking, the way they've recorded the guitars. Very cool. Up here got very cool bluesy guitar solo, and the bass and drumming are very tight throughout the song. The outro guitar playing is my favorite part of the song. It's just got something about it, and I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Never a skip.
Wow,
Professor.
Yeah, what I wrote down, Brody, following up from what I wrote down as my sort of thing is Southern rock riff played as an 80s pop rock song. I kind of got the feeling they had something that was like a Southern rock thing, and then it got produced into that kind of 80s sound that they'd had, particularly on the previous track. I didn't quite know whether it ought to be one or the other. I don't know if that's true. It seemed like it developed as much more that kind of Southern rock thing, and then they produced it so that it got a lot of that production styles. So I thought it slightly fell between two stools in a funny kind of way. Not quite one or the other. But I agree. I think there's a bit more swing on the drums. I think there's a bit more of a swing to it that was cool. And as you can see, those multi-track guitars, which are going to be a feature of organizing the track, and the backing vocals as well. 220 has a slow section with backing vocals and things. That was really good. And as Brad says, the solo guitar and the singing at the end is really cool as well. I gave it 7.5 out of 10, but I wouldn't skip it for sure.
Yeah,
cool,
good. Wow, frighteningly consistent consensus here. Okay, the third track, which on this record, the unique thing about it is written by Jim Peterick, no co-writes. So what ends up being the title track of the record, Wild Eyed Southern Boys, is a song that he had written, and I don't recall exactly if this was like Rockin' Into the Night, where it was one he had written and it just didn't work for Survivor, or what they were going to end up doing or not. But here's this song that it's probably the most uniquely structured song, on the record, because there are key changes all over it. And, it's got that, like this really cool riff that I would say is still very Southern rock, but they pop, but it's poppy, and lyrically, it's like I think this song almost becomes the thesis of the band. You know, I mean, they're still this southern rock band. You know, and you don't deny that. It's just they needed to figure out how to make something their own. So this song comes in, and I was really surprised the first time I read the liner notes to not see Barnes, Carlisi, Van Zant, anything like that. But it was like, excuse me, who's this Peterick guy? You know, but it's like 38 didn't even write this song. I mean, and this was like 40 years ago when I'm reading through this stuff. So the little rim shot, drum intro on it, very very cool. It brings out that percussive thing, which I don't know how many hundreds of times I listened to it before I realized, oh, that sounds a bit like LaGrange. And yeah, like just a bit, not a copy, but it was like, oh, they're thinking along the same lines like that. But the dynamics of the guitars in this thing go all the way from a really, muted, just kind of ease into it, and then it just goes from that to big, and I think you can tell the Carlisi Barnes thing if you really geek out on it like I do, but it's like Don Barnes is the more aggressive stuff seems to be Barnes, both incredibly melodic, but when you hear that just slightly bent a little bit more than normal, or more of a pinch, or a little more of the grit on it, that's usually him. And I think most of the soloing in this was Don Barnes versus that Carlisi, again, incredibly melodic but more polished stuff. And the thing that was so cool about this one, it was that it was Barnes primarily on the vocals, but it's him and Donnie Van Zant going back and forth. It's a conversation. And the whole, you look at the album cover, which back then you had album covers and you got to look at them. It was, they're going into this pub or this juke joint or whatever this honky tonk or whatever you want to call it. This song like describes the band, the place, these guys going into a thing and a fight breaks out, and there's some guy that's, big man on campus in there that's got a champagne Eldorado parked outside because he's a big deal. But but everything that we've already touched on with the drumming, the pocket, the guitars. I mean, I don't know how many times I'll say it, but melodic. The tones are fantastic, and then but again, what I really like, because I'm a huge Don Barnes fan of his voice, and with Donnie Van Zant, he's more of that Skinnerd element of the band, and I love 38 as a pop band, as a guitar band. But the way they go back and forth, and if you listen to even the way that it's panned, and then at one point they're like the one guy whistles at the other one. It's a conversational song that says, here's who we are, here's what we do, here's where we do it, and and here. So for me, this is one of those three songs that this one's a 10 for me.
Wow, another interesting elaboration and discussion for us, Brody. Look, I agree with you. I think it's an excellent opening on this number. I love it. It's a fine example too, also of the bass and the drums, and there's a bold interaction going on, especially with that double kick. That you mentioned, the rhythm on this track, it's outstanding. I too enjoyed the interplay between the vocalists on this as well. I got it. I got what was going on. And, again, we talk about this often. If you're not familiar with the song, but you can still imagine yourself in a situation because you're listening to a song. And you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, we've been listening to this album for 2 weeks. So I've listened to it quite a few times, this album, over the last 2 weeks. I've changed my score a lot of times, Brody, on this. I originally gave it an 8. I've given it a 9, but because of your introduction to it, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. but I do love the bold interaction and the interpretation between the drum and the bass, especially on this song. It's really important. Brad.
Wow. All right. Well, it's I'm not last, but I feel sorry for Simon because by the time I'm done, there's not much left to say. So the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys. In my notes here, I've got like that cleaner guitar intro and that great lead guitar that comes in over the top of it. Very cool, like that. It's very, very well recorded. It's got a catchy melody through the verses, and the chorus is very catchy. There's a slight swinging up tempo sort of drumming, and there's like this interplay between the drums and the bass. It's got this little funky feel going.
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it was very cool, and a great guitar solo. I love that little breakdown section as well that's in the song, and the outro with that chorus and the guitar, like lead guitar over the top and solo, which is awesome. So without sort of doubling up on what you guys have already said, I gave it a 10 out of 10. And that's strictly and utterly for the guitar playing alone. I think it's great playing on it. So, 10 out of 10.
Well done.
Oh, Professor.
Well, I'm going to be the smart ass and say it only took me one go to realise that the intro was from Lagrange. Just similar to that rim shot thing. I'll go and stand in the corner. But that actually reminded me, right, and that kind of, it has a bit more of that southern rock thing in it, this track, I think, than the others. There's a bit more of that. I can't add much more to what you said. I think that again, it has. I like the fact that they kind of have at the end they seem to have quite a lot of the songs which have singing and they have guitar playing, solos underneath the singing kind of thing, as a kind of counterpoint almost to the singing, which I think is pretty cool. I gave this a 9 out of 10 and never a skip. I think it's one of the central songs on the album. Absolutely.
Yep. Beautiful.
Perfect.
Right.
Wow. Number 4, and the Rock Professor on the the soloing under the vocals. That's a common thing, and you listen, which if we made a list of what makes them, what are the staples of 38 Special, that's one of them, and
that's one of them. Yeah.
Because, and again, they're parts, and I think it, when you put even some of the same guitar solos, like those bits and pieces are from Caught Up in You, from Hold On Loosely, Wild-Eyed Southern Boys. I mean, there are deliberate parts that they bring back in at the end over top of the choruses or the outros or whatever. Okay, number 4, a song called Back Alley Sally. Written by Carlisi and Don Barnes, and Donnie Van Zant, not Don Barnes. To me, this is I say this is still the remnants of Skynyrd in the band and in 38, and it's got a fun energy. It's got a very Skynyrd-esque feel to it, like that southern just attitude, lyrically, everything, some cool guitars in it, but I miss Don Barnes' vocals. It's not a poppy song, and it doesn't, to me, it's not on the level of the other songs of the record. So I'm a 6 on this one. And again, if I have a 3-song ride somewhere, this is not one of the 3 songs from that record.
Yeah. Again, Brody. I've got to back you up there, brother. But I've got a couple of little points though to defend the song, if I can say. Defend? Is that the word? No. Look, it's a full throttle song, isn't it? It's full on. It's a fantastic solo on the song. I love the harmonics, Brad. There's some pinch notes going on here, a bit of arpeggios. It's a hard driving song. It's going nowhere special though, Brody. It's a song that starts off, but it just doesn't take us anywhere, and it's a little bit disappointing because of that. I too have given it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. Back Alley Sally.
Nice one.
Back Alley Sally. Well, it's a cheeky song about Sally, who obviously likes the back alley. So, okay. We all know a girl like Sally, all right? We all know one. It's a very bluesy feel to this one. I'm going to move forward very quickly and promptly and get away from the dirt track. Get back on the bitumen, back on the asphalt, all right? Yes, very catchy melody. Some great harmony vocals. Great guitar solo. And in fact, the whole song's got a lot of really cool lead guitar playing in it. And for that reason, I gave it 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, I think I'm a bit more with you, Brad. I think that this is definitely a change. A change in what they've done. The previous 3 tracks, and this is track 4 of an album. And you're going, all right, we have to do something a bit different. We've set out our stall with the with the first track, and the second 2 tracks are broadening out a bit. Whereas this is very much, as you've said, that kind of southern rock and roll thing, isn't it? Almost, it's got that kind of 12-bar. With the piano, the rock and roll piano in it, and things like that, that take it back, I think, more into that kind of 70s thing. It reminded me a lot of early 70s stuff, which would still have been playing like this. A lot of songs that would have been like this, rather than into the 80s, which is what the earlier stuff is. Which I think is one of the things that makes it something of a schizophrenic album, isn't it? It quite position itself in one or the other. So this is appealing to the fans of maybe their earlier stuff, which is a bit more southern rock. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I love that sort of jaunty rock and roll riff to start with, and the rock and roll piano and stuff. I gave this an 8 out of 10 and never a skip. I thought it was a good contrast. I think that as I talk along here about programming and stuff, and I think that this is a really good contrast to the previous 3 tracks, and kind of it's a bit more southern than Wild Eyed Southern Boys, so you can see there's a kind of where they're going with it, but I think it broadens out, and I wouldn't skip it, and I'd give it 8 out of 10.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything less than every song on here, regardless of the rank. For me, it's like brilliant guitar playing. I mean, that's the thing on all of it, and which is why every guitar player I meet, I'm like, have you ever heard of 38 Special? Have you ever Jeff Carley? Because you find that a handful once in a while where they're like, oh yeah, the what, and when they can play it, I'm just like, wow, So every song on here has got brilliant guitar playing from me. The next one, number 5, is that third, track of Perfection. And the interesting thing about this one is Carlisi, and you can go look all this stuff up too, or listen to. There are not many interviews out there, but I think I found most of them and listened to them. But you'll hear, excuse me, him speak a lot about the techniques and in the early recording, like with Barry Bailey and Rodney Mills and guys that made him want to play. And he even there's a funny story about the Cars, and that Just What I Needed song. And when it first came out, he said, I hated it. I couldn't turn it off fast enough. So it was interesting how a number of times then that gets into him, and then he learned to love it, and then it becomes this really influential thing with Hold On Loosely. But his guitar playing, from a guitar player standpoint, like everybody's got their guy. You're a Clapton guy, you're a Jimmy Page guy, you're a Jeff Beck guy, whatever. With Carlisi, there are a couple of guys that he mentions pretty consistently, and one of them is Brian May, with those melodic solos, and if you can sing the solo, that's what he really loved about Brian May. and it's like, oh, I get it now. That he wrote parts. He didn't just fill up, something on a track and just, fall down the stairs and land on your feet kind of thing. These were deliberate things. And
Okay.
another one of his influences or heroes was Jerry Reed. So you get a lot of that that country, kind of Chet Atkins, Travis style picking, but Jerry Reed was one where again this was one of the first times that he's with Jim Peterick, and this song was written by Carlisi and Peterick, which is interesting because when you hear Don Barnes sing this, or Don Barnes sing this song, it sounds like he wrote it. It's like he's that convincing in his delivery of it. But with it, Peterick goes, what have you got? What sort of like, that's how all these songs start. And they're sitting there and he's like, well, I got this little, dun, 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 dun. And it's very much a thumb and finger kind of thing on that riff. And it was not country at all, but very Jerry Reed, whenever he said that. And then, so that part to me is brilliant, the tone of it. And that was, again, with that honk kind of rhythm sound that they have and everything, that finger thing of Carlisi was what I'd always wondered. How does he get that sound, And then you realize it's a Les Paul Deluxe. They were playing PV Mace amps, which were 160 watt 6L6 rock and roll amps, and I want to say he played that through a Marshall cabinet that was there that belonged to Barry Bailey. But so that tone of that part, not only the tone, the part, the thing was perfect. And then that energy, whenever it starts getting into the power chords and the chugging and that kind of thing, that's where it gets really, really good for me. And with Don Barnes's vocal, on it, that's his singing, that timbre when he gets up there, especially songs they're doing like in the key of E, which this one is in. It's like he's really, really going for it. But that in the chorus of that part where it's like a hammer on, it's actually a minor to a minor 7, and it goes up to the D with a C sharp. It's like that whole, there's a shuffle in it, in that playing that. So, and then of course all the solos are brilliant in it, and the outros and the parts, I mean, they're all just so deliberate and perfect. And what I really like about it is on that first solo, you can tell how loud that was. There's not tons of gain in it, which I really like. I think, Brad said before, it's clear, and that's a perfect way to put it. There's not tons of distortion on it. You can hear that it's you can hear that they're Gibsons. You can hear that there's not effect and dirt to hide behind on this stuff. These guys are really playing these parts, and I think every structure from the opening riff to the my mind's eye sees a vision of blah blah, the getting into the chorus, it's like it just it sets itself up perfectly. And then when it gets into that me and my fantasy girl, it's like that pocket just tightens up. It's sort of shuffling and a little looser as it goes on, and then that one, it's like bam, and that's the pocket of 38 is brilliant too. And that riff, it's like it's just like there's the power. You just put it in high gear and hang on, and then his vocals just sit on top of everything. And then, like Brad said earlier too, there's soloing and notes going on, and a lot of times like double parts underneath the song. And again, it's one of those, you listen to it and every time you hear something you didn't know was in there. So for me, it's at least a 10, like Hold On Loosely, Wild Out Southern Boy. To me, this is one of the most brilliantly written songs ever.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow.
Andrew.
Follow that.
Sorry.
I'm going to get philosophical here. I've got a note here. It's a beacon of positivity, Brody. I love the rattling snare. And it's a deceptive song because you could think that it's simple, but it's not. And you've just elaborated for us why it's not, because of the musicality and the layers and the textures going on in this song. I'm not going to repeat what you said, but I'm just going to say this. I've made a note here. It's with perfect guitar solos. Perfect guitar solos. So, we're on the money there, brother. I agree with you. I've given this a 10 out of 10. It's one of the stars, definitely, of the track, of the album, I should say. Brad and Rock Professor, what have you got to say?
Well, I'm going to keep it brief because I don't want to choke up what Brody said. I don't want to sort of. I'd like to end this song on what Brody said, but I enjoyed the description there, Brody. But about the intro, I called it like a swirly sort of style guitar playing. It's got like a swirl to it in the intro there. With some accenting parts leading into the intro, or the stabs or the grabs, what I call accents, and then some cool drumming, which we're not really talking a lot about that. I think there's some great bass playing and drumming in this song in particular. A very catchy song, catchy chorus. The guitar solos are very melodic. I've got that here. We're given some fantastic guitar playing throughout this whole song, and with the second solo, how it fades out, I've put here. You kind of wish it wasn't fading out. You want to hear what's going on in that solo, but there's some great bending throughout the guitar playing. I love bends and the vibratos used, and some wonderful things going on during the soloing, and that alone, I'm going to give it 10 out of 10 and never skip. Rock Professor.
Yeah, so this is the closest you get to a ballad on this record, isn't it? So it's not particularly a ballad, but it is the closest you get. And again, contrast with what's gone before, really. So I think that's it's important that we recognise that as a programming thing. That you've had those first 4 tracks, and then this is track 5, and then it is something different. Quite a lot different to what we've had before. I don't have much to add to what that amazing description, Brody, and stuff. But I kind of wrote down that the solo at 137, that kind of very melodic solo. Kind of, there were some elements to me. I wrote down Brian May. I also wrote down Stuart Adamson from Big Country. Kind of, there's a kind of like almost kind of Celtic things in there that were really interesting to me. So that was pretty cool. Just little hints, but 9 out of 10 from me. Never a skip.
Perfect. And one more thing to note, as if there is another thing to note, that solo, it's very similar in the middle and at the end in the outro. They're the same parts that are in there if you listen to them. So I'm gonna deliberately say less about the next tracks then, so I'm not saying what everybody else says.
It's fine. Lovely. Really cool.
Okay, the next one called Hittin' and Runnin', written by Barnes and Peterick. And what's interesting on here is you've got, on the whole record, you've got Jim Peterick on 4 songs. One by himself, which was Wild Out Southern Boys. Hold On Loosely with Barnes and Carlisi and Peterick. And then you've got Fantasy Girl, which was Carlisi and Peterick. And now this next one, Hittin' and Runnin', which is Barnes and Peterick. So it's almost like they all 3 wrote, and then Jim Peterick went with each one of them, to do a song.
Yeah.
And with this one, again, it's very, un-Southern rock on here. And I think this one, it was almost like let's write a pop song. Let's write something that's got some kind of feel, some kind of, big movements in the chord progressions. Again, the guitars are always good. I don't know. It seemed like maybe it was an era specific thing where there's always talk about, on the streets, like, and on this one, like out on the streets again. Did everybody just hang out on the streets back then, or what? It's almost like, like even Don't Stop Believing, like in the Journey song, there was a lot of reference, I think, where people, were just out, they were cruising, whatever. So I always found that one to be interesting. But this one seemed like this was a unique thing. This was like, okay, I see where they're going for this one. So again, Don Barnes's vocals, always fantastic. Not one of my favorite songs on the record. So to me, this was a 7, and I don't want to say what you guys might be wanting to say again. So
it's one of the joys that you get of going first. You can say it all, brother.
Yeah. Or you can say something wrong and the next 3 guys contradict you.
Oh, we've had a few of those, but it's okay. We'll still come back and play. Is it my turn, is it?
Yes, bro.
It is your turn.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I've made some notes here, guys. A bluesy kind of minor key thing going on here on this song. I love the full set of harmonies, and you've mentioned that, Brody, the full set of harmonies. So it's all singers singing on this. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's at least 2 parts.
Yeah, and I like that. And I love the momentum that they've got going on in this song with that rhythm section. Again, you can feel that. You can feel that power going on. Again, I've got a note here of a bluesy feel, but what I really, really like about this song, and I'm going to pinch a word that Brad often uses when he describes a guitar solo. It's a tasty guitar that's going on here on this solo, but I like the fluidity that's going on with it. It's not just basic pentatonics going on here, Brody. There's something going on, behind what you can hear. I like that, and as you said many times during the course of this ranking, the layering and the understanding of the guitar player, clearly it's something that's musical in him, and it's coming through on the guitars. I like that. I've given this a 9 out of 10. Kind of like it. Kind of like the song. Brad.
So we've been going on about the guitar playing and stuff that's going on throughout these songs, and in Hidden and Running, that little drum intro, from that moment, there's some wonderful moving chord shapes and inversions going on in my head. I'm picturing, I haven't sat down to try and work out what they're playing yet, but I'm picturing like chord inversions and stuff as opposed to playing straight bar chords. There's a lot of that going on. There's a good melody through the song. It's got that laid back swinging feel a little bit on the drums, tight bass going on. It's again another melodic guitar solo. Some bluesy overtones, like Andrew mentioned. I picked up on the bluesy overtones, and again the song has a guitar solo, then it has another chorus, and then another guitar solo, and the solo fades out again. So yeah, it's a cool song. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Rock Professor.
Cool.
Yes, this is kind of, to me, this is back to that sort of 80s kind of, pop rock thing. More the intro reminded me of Toto, Hold the Line, in a funny kind of way. So I always associate with the things that I recognise already. No, I think that can't add pretty much. I think you can tell it's, but again, very worked out. The guitar is pretty worked out. Multi-track vocals in the chorus and things. Yeah. So clearly think about production and what they're going to introduce. Keep it interesting, keep it fresh, and keep things ever changing as you go through the song. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Never a skip.
Brilliant.
There we go.
Honky Tonk.
Honky Tonk Dancer. Don Barnes, Barnes, Steele, and Van Zant. So I think anytime there's a Van Zant, it's got that Southern thing to it, and this is definitely one of those songs of, this is the Southern rock. This is, I think, the stuff they were starting to move, away from. But the guitars, the rhythm. I mean, they were such a great band. And the other one in this, now we've got the background singers, in this one too, which is, always a plus. And I should have looked up the names of the singers on there, but those two, those female voices were just fantastic. I mean, they were very, very strong. But all the guitar parts, they're not just, bend a few notes. And again, they're very structured. They're very melodic. They're very difficult to play. I mean, this is not something you're going to just pick up and noodle around on. I mean, these are compositions that that have that element of what made Skynyrd such a great guitar band also. But the 38 tone, the layering, the note choices. So they had a little of that attitude, but it had sophistication in it too, where you look at that and go, wow, that's really phenomenal guitar playing. So, again, and the subject matter, Honky Tonk Dancer. I mean, this is Southern rock, and I'd give it an 8, but it's not my top 3.
Yeah. Brody, I've got here, it's a catchy sing-along vocal line. I like the nice kicks and the snare going on here on this number. I love the rhythm crunch with the solo. So again, you've got that rhythm crunch going on and the solo over it. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's one of the highlights, musical highlights on the album, is that wonderful sound that comes through. And it's an excellent example, in my opinion, Brody, of a mature radio-friendly sound on this song. It's a song that I think would have worked well in 1980 on the radio. I don't know where the song worked as a single. Don't know anything about that, Brody, but yeah, I love the song. I've given it a 9 out of 10. I like especially, Brad, I like especially the rhythm crunch and that solo on this track.
It's like it's like we've got the same notes, Andrew. We think very much alike at times, and then completely opposite other times. Honky Tonk Dancer. Look, slightly funkier feel to this one. I picked up the bass and drums have that little bit of a funk vibe going on, and the really funky guitars. Like there's something a little bit more than straight playing on this one. There's a little bit an element of funk there. Very catchy vocal melody. I've got here my notes. Very cool guitar solo. It leads off a little bit melodic and then really digs in as it sort of gets moving. It's really cool. I almost expected to hear a wah pedal in this solo, though. I don't know why. I was waiting for it the whole time. I'm like, "Where's the damn wah?" I'm like, should be a wah pedal in there because I feel the song needed a wah. If I was recording, I would have put a wah pedal on it anyway.
Oh, well, the next song makes up for the wah. The next one must do.
So there's some great guitar playing throughout this song. You know, I gave this a 9 out of 10 as well, Andrew and Brady and Simon. So, Rock Professor.
Yeah. Well, as you said, I think I can't add much more. It's much more that kind of shuffle boogie thing, much more in the Skinner, the Southern rock thing that, I think there's a dichotomy in this record, isn't there, with the two sides of them kind of still slightly competing. I don't know, bro, later on, did they carry on with the kind of pop rock stuff, the kind of that 80s thing? Did they go more into that, or did they?
They were, this was that record that then they went very, very pop, because that was the success. That was the formula, the equation. And there would still be a song or two that were, kind of reminding everybody that, of their roots in the Southern rock thing with Donnie Van Zant singing the song and, the lyrics, the story behind it. But they definitely were more deliberate in writing, those eighth notes, the guitar chugs, the Don Barnes singing, most of the stuff, in his tenure in the band. But it was a time also that, and co-writers. I mean, Peterick is with them through a lot of the this one and the Special Forces record, and then on Tour de Force, which was probably, that's when they were headliners, I think. And I want to say even that's when Bon Jovi opened, was their opening act for a while. And I think it was the Tour de Force thing. But yes, they did that. But so there was always that element of pop songs and co-writers, and there was been different sets of them.
Yeah, and if it was just them, then it was a bit more of the Southern rock thing that kind of kicking in with bands and stuff. Yeah. I really enjoyed this. I think that I'm a big fan of that Southern kind of Southern boogie thing. I don't know much to it. I gave this 8.5 out of 10 and never skipped. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and even when Don Barnes had left the band, after the Strength in Numbers record, and like 86 or 87, and they brought in a guy named Max Carl, who's one of the greatest singers ever. I think he's been out with Grand Funk, obviously 38 Special, but their first number one was a song called Second Chance, a ballad. So we go from, here's this Southern rock band, like basically a Skinner type band or a Atlanta Rhythm Section or Outlaws. They end up with a top, a number one in the form of a ballad. So that was pretty interesting. So they're charting all the time with Caught Up in You, Hold On Loosely, Fantasy Girl, Rockin' Into the Night, Back Where You Belong, If I'd Been the One, Somebody Like You. I mean, they're hits all over the place. And then they were the go-to for movie soundtracks for a while. Revenge of the Nerds, with Back to Paradise. They did a song called Teacher, Teacher. So they were very much not Kenny Loggins big when it comes to movie soundtracks, but they were the go-to for, at least 2 or 3, pretty big movies. So, but always that double guitar assault, that was always there, which I never understood why they were never recognized as a guitar band. But okay, next to the last song, Throw Out the Line, and I'm going to set this up for you guys again to do more of the talking on it. But it was Barnes, Carlisi, Van Zant. So we've got that original. Hey, we're 38 Special. We're a Southern rock band. Literally taking advice from Ronnie Van Zant of Skinner. These are the guys that all hung out, and Ronnie's the guy telling them, stay true to yourself, do what you do. He actually told Jeff Carlisi to stay in college. So it was like he was always this father figure to everybody. Even, I mean, the guy was in his 20s, you know, and everybody looked up to him. So, anyway, I digress. But the throw out the line, this was that original. I'd say these are still that original formula of the band before the co-writes and the pop thing. But again, the pocket, the guitars. I'm just repeating myself at this point. There are no bad songs on here, but this one's not one of my top 3. So I mean, this one's an 8 for me.
Interesting. Is there a slide going on in the intro there?
Yes.
Yeah. So I love slide, and I said, you know, before, Brady, I hope the non-wah on the previous song, you know, the slide makes up for it, Brad. Look, I love the slide. I think it's a unique thing to the song. Brady, I would have liked to have maybe heard it a little bit earlier on some of the tracks, you know. But it's just because I'm biased to slide, so I don't know if that would have worked. I love the blues feel to it. Strong vocals, solid rock song. It's a solid rock song. If we've mentioned some previous songs sounding polished and radio ear friendly, and again, you know, that's not a negative. You know, this has got that rock vibe feel going to it. I like it because of that. I've got a 9 out of 10. So catchy number, Brad.
Yeah, I love slide guitar as well. I'm not great at playing it, but I love listening to it. And you know, I know Mr. Walton, Andrew, you're a very good slide player, mate. So you know, I'm pumping up your tires a little bit, but I've seen you play slide, and it's pretty damn good, mate. So I can understand why you like this one. Look, to me, this one, it's got like a held back feel on the drums, slightly held back. And it picks up a bit then when the slide guitar kicks in. The slide guitar kicks in. Catchy vocal I've got here. The chorus is very sing-along style. Like at a concert, you could imagine the crowd be singing along with this one, and they'd be trying to encourage the crowd to sing. Great guitar solo I've got. The slide, it brings in that southern rock style for me, and blues. It brings that blues element there as well. We always talk about, you know, order of songs on albums being important. I kind of agree with Andrew. I thought this song should have maybe been a little bit earlier in the song ranking, in the song listing, the track ranking of the album, but it does make a pretty good second last song to the album as well. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10. Rock Professor.
Yeah, well, I guess I can sort of see why it's to me. This is quite a bit of an odd because it's, as you said, it's got that side. To me, it reminded of it's quite a Stonesy feel to it as well, quite a Rolling Stone sort of feel at the beginning. That kind of, you know, at the beginning, especially, and underneath the singing, definitely that kind of thing that I associate myself with the Rolling Stones, and so I can see that, you know, that it's moving over here a bit from where they are, from the radio friendly stuff, and then you've got the Southern Rock, and it's just a bit of a, you know, a bit of a move over to the left or the right, whichever your point of view is. I really liked it. I think it's got a really cool, you know, swinging vibe to it. That Stonesy vibe is always good from my point of view. And you know, I think there's a bit more space in it as well for the instruments. It's not quite so produced in the same way as Andrew said. You know, there's a bit more kind of almost a live band kind of thing to it, where the instruments have a bit more space in them, and there's not so much multi-tracking of the instruments to do that. Yeah, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10 and never a skip. I enjoyed it as a good track.
Yeah. last and not least, but number 9. And you know how I pointed out, you've got the, the Carlisi Barnes Van Zant equation of the original. Then you had, the Peterick, either by himself or with Barnes Carlisi, and then with them individually. Well, there's an interesting thing here on 1, 2, 3, like first time around, Honky Tonk Dancer and Bring It On, you've got Steele in there that is one of the writers, Larry Steele. And the song Honky Tonk Dancer was written by Steele, Van Zant, and Barnes. This last song was written by Carlisi, Steele, and Van Zant. So it's almost like they're trying to figure out, with each of the co-writers, with Steele and Peterick, they've got a group set of writers, and then they've got let's do something with Don Barnes, and with Steele is with Barnes and Van Zant, and then with Carlisi and Van Zant. So here's the one the Honky Tonk Dancer, and throughout there's this common element when Van Zant is involved in it, and I think this song is, Bring It On is another example of that, where it's got that Southern attitude. It's got that, here's who we are and what we do. And, we're kind of, the rebels or the rascals or the rebels, the bad guys or whatever. And, this, the attitude in this song, it's sort of like the, thank you, Cleveland, good night. It's got that energy to it, where it's not the hit, but in the context of these 9 songs, it probably is the outro. It's like I'd love to know the logic of when they put all the, the order together, but to open with Hold On Loosely, it's sort of like, boom, that's like opening with Hotel California. Here it is. This is what we're doing. And then I don't know that there would be a bad order to this collection of songs, but Bring It On seems to be a bit of a bookend, or a bit of a, oh yeah, wait till you see the next one kind of thing. This felt like they wrapped it up, like we've got a new recipe here for who we are and what we do. And then as we get into more of the next records, you can hear how they further fine-tuned that, and there's even less of that Southern rock element to it, and it becomes more pop, but also more hard rock, with some of these, with songs on the next records. So these are all, and I mean, it's a good, better, best, kind of thing. So I even some of those where I'd originally said, it's a 7, it's like, okay, it could have been an 8, could have been an 8.5, whatever. I love the whole record. That's why I was, so giddy to bring it to you guys and do this. So with this one, this has an energy. It's got the female singers in it, amazing guitars, and it could always have more Don Barnes vocals for me. So I mean, for me, this was a good send off. I give it a 9, not because it's track number 9, but I give it a 9.
Again, Brody, wonderful analysis. I appreciate it. Look, you've elaborated why I've made this note here: muscular, swinging song. So you've outlined why I've made that note. It's because of the songwriter. So thank you. So I've got that note here. The rhythm guitar is terrific, but that cranking solo with the harmonics, it's just fantastic going up, and I think it's fantastic. It's a big, open, catchy number, and I've mentioned it before. The intricate rhythm guitars that's going on this track is just fantastic. It's powerful, and it's just chunky. I love it, and it's a catchy chorus. I think Primal Scream, when they came out, get your rocks off, I think this is, where they maybe an influence came from for them with that album. I'm sure of it. I'm just about going to give this a Brad score. I just think it's I think it's fantastic.
Hey!
I'm going to. It's a wonderful song. Again, I'm amazed that they've left this song for the last. It should have been in the middle somewhere. Should have been in the middle. It's just a great number. I love it. It's a Brad score. Love it. Brad.
Bring it on, I say. Bring it on. I really enjoyed the. I think it's very cool that guitar intro, the chugging guitars.
Yeah.
Some very classy lead guitar playing in this song. Catchy vocals, the melody, catchy chorus line. I'm all about melody lines when it comes to vocals, more so than the lyrics. I think it's what sticks in your head, and I love the melody lines are very cool. There's some really stinging guitar playing, especially in the solo. What have I got here? The drumming and the bass are very locked in this song. At around 4 minutes and 10 seconds, we hear some lovely unison bends in the solo, which is something that I love. I love hearing unison bends all the time. Like the way he executes those is fantastic.
Yep.
The guitar solo towards the end of the track fades out again. I can only imagine that during the recording session for this, that they jammed on it a bit longer than what we've actually heard. I would have liked to have heard the crash and burn at the end of it instead of fading it out, because I like things. But yeah, for me, it's a great song, and I gave it a 10 out of 10. A Brad score, if you want to call it that as well, Andrew. But yeah, for me, it's a great way to end the album. And I do think maybe this should have ended the side A, I reckon.
Yeah.
But it's a very strong ending to the album.
Yeah.
Rock Professor.
Oh, it's track 1, side 2, isn't it? Bring it on. It absolutely is there, I think. Yeah. I mean, I wrote down the same thing. Got swagger riff, and that attitude when he sings "Bring It On" is a very kind of southern thing, isn't it? It's absolutely in that kind of Ronnie Van Zant type of way. That I think is really cool. I think this is my note. As I said, I thought this is probably the best amalgam of the two styles that they go for on this record.
Yep.
The southern rock thing, but mixing in that sort of more pop rock thing that we've talked about previously. I actually think it's probably the best amalgam of those two styles, in my humble opinion. Again, yeah, great guitar playing and stuff, and great solos and things. I give it a 9 out of 10 and never a skip. I think it's a fantastic ending to a record. Yeah. As I say, put it track 1, side 2 for sure. If not track 1, side 1. I mean, Bring It On is a is a challenge in anything, isn't it? Start with that, bring it.
Yeah.
But,
Thank you, Holly, for the nice words. Great ranking for a great band, great education, fun time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. But big chunk of the salutation that you've given, Holly, has to go to Brody, especially for your introduction, Brody. It's outstanding. Thank you, brother. Thank you for picking this album. Thank you for coming on and giving us an opportunity to talk about this album, because we had some technical issues there, but we managed. You persevered, brother.
The wonders of modern technology. Yes.
No, it's crazy. No, well, I it's to be in the presence of greatness. Thank you guys very much. And, no, I'm serious. I'm not being no. Because I've listened to the other ones that you guys have done, and I was like, I don't want to just show up and it's like I felt like I had to really prepare. I'm like, these guys are serious, so I appreciate that you guys kind of setting that level, and you made me dig deep and listen to what I was already familiar with, but with a more detailed, like, cite your reference, and I kind of went into academic mode there, and but no, I really appreciate you guys spending so much of your time on music that's really special to me. Again, I felt a little bit selfish about it, but I really appreciated you guys. Obviously I respect and enjoy everything you guys do, and it was really a thrill to have you three chaps jump on there and get in my world and say a lot of the same things. It was affirmation and always a great time. So thank you guys so much.
Brody, we're just fans, and we say that all the time. The Brad, the Rock Professor, and I, and we're just guys hanging out. We're just fans talking about music that we love and sharing that music, and it's one of the joys that we like doing. Music's a big part of who we are, and thank you for participating. You'll be back for sure. We've got some more albums to rank with you. Yeah, we're hatching some plans, but thank you. I'm gonna probably pass it on to Brad and the Rock Professor, and then we'll give you the last word, and then we'll get you into bed so that you can be up bright and early.
Yes,
Brad.
Yeah, well, look, Brody, thanks for choosing the album. It's always wonderful to, rediscover things like we do in our personal lives. We get busy. You certain things fly off the radar. This band's flown off the radar for me.
Yep.
Many years. So it was wonderful to dive deep into this record, and great hanging out with you as well, and hearing your elaborate talks about this band. And obviously you're passionate about it, and it comes through. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Simon.
That was fantastic. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I didn't know anything about them at all, and I'm always keen to, to hear new things. And for me, this is a new thing, so I've not heard it at all. But also, I get the passion of, I really like this record. But the recognition is not necessarily perfect, but you really like it, and I think that's fantastic. I think that's the real way of looking at it. I also would say, thank you for recognizing the amount of work that we put into each one of these shows. Because I'm sure I speak for the other two guys. I probably do 10, 12 hours research and listening every week. Driving around in the car. Have it on headphones or while you're cooking or whatever. Because I think the albums are worth it, and I think they're worth putting in that amount of time. To listen to them. Really get some understanding about what they are, where they're coming from, references, all those things. I think it's, you can't do it on just a quick run through. I do a proper run through where I make notes and stuff of each track, what I think of each track. And then I go back and I listen to it, and I'm then looking at more of an overall thing about, what I think about each track and what I think it fits and stuff. And, if I have some ideas about it. But as Andrew says, we're fans, it's sort of, I don't have any claims to have a great insight, but, I think digging into these albums and, understanding what they are, where they come from, what they do, I think is really great fun. And I hope that other people find some value from it as well. But thanks, Brody, for coming on and doing all of that and being great intro, great insights, great in-depth, thoughts about it. It's fantastic. Come back soon.
Yeah, we've got the perfect album for Brody to come back on. He's a Clapton nut. We haven't finished with Clapton. We haven't done a Clapton album for a while, so yeah. We'll get Brody on for a Clapton album for sure. We'll definitely organise that, Brody. Rock Professor, do you want to do a shout out?
I was going to say, let me do a shout out. I've got an album that maybe you could do as well, Brody, as well. But shh. Mum's the word. So if I just I'll scroll back up to the top. Thanks, guys, as ever for turning up and being fantastic in the chat. Andrew's putting up lots of your comments, and they've all been fantastically positive and things. So thanks to Tim Thomas, Ellen, Digital Guitars UK, Gret Zeppelin, Holly, of course, Holly Lewis, Thank you, Holly. Thank you for the mugs. Fantastic. We now
Thank
all
you.
got mugs, which is brilliant. So
Thank you.
that's, scrolling down. Got John ZD351. Thanks, John, as ever. I hope you're well. Unpacked a few more boxes. Hugh Caldwell, fantastic. Warren as well.
Yes, it's all
Warren turning up. Oh, nice one, Warren. Hope you're well. Hope it's all going okay for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, on the one, I'll shout out to Robert Schaffner as well. Robert, if you're watching, hi, get well soon. I've been messaging him and stuff, and so he's at home, recovering from his nasty turn. So Rob, get well soon, mate, and we hope to see you back soon. So quick shout out to him. Digital Guitars UK, and then some bloke called Brad Cook. Time, mate. Yes, absolutely. I think hopefully that's everybody. I hope I don't miss anybody. So thanks all for joining. Another fantastic show, and thanks especially to Brodie for bringing us something new and something different and something for us to dig into. Fantastic. And we'll see you guys next week for me and Andrew are going to do a bit of general chat, aren't we? I'll tell you a bit more about my That Pedal Show experience.
Perfect.
Brad, you coming on? You're going to come on and talk to us about effects too, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Brad, I'm missing you out. How rude. Apologies. And Brad as well.